So Bike Pittsburgh was founded 20 years ago, basically with a few people, a few Pittsburghers, one of which was Scott Bricker, who just moved back from San Francisco, David Hoffman, who was hit by a car, and the driver yelled at him, "That's what sidewalks are for." And then Lou Feinberg, a lifelong Pittsburgher who just really liked riding around. And them and a couple other people got together and started the organization. Got it together to start pushing for those changes.
I've been a car-free transportation person for most of my life. Actually, just in the last year, I started experiencing life with an actual car. So as a real citizen on the ground, I've gotten to see the efforts of Bike Pittsburgh really come to fruition.
Back in 2005, I was actually co-founder of the Free Ride Bicycle Cooperative out in Point Breeze. And we decided to do an event called Bike Fest. And so we approached Bike Pittsburgh to do the event sort of underneath the umbrella of the organization. The event was a big success. And right around that time, the people who were running the organization applied for and gained a grant to hire the first staff of the organization. And I think a big part of that was because I was around so much, I knew what was going on. I started getting involved and volunteering with the organization itself. That position opened up and I got it.
Each year we have a pretty robust event season. I think during COVID it was a little bit derailed, but this was the first year since 2019 that we've been back on track with a full event season. And so what that looked like was we had 3 open streets events this year. They are really large-scale free community events in different neighborhoods around Pittsburgh, where we open up the streets to people-powered activities rather than having cars on them.
Well, we like to say that we have 3 buckets of our work: advocacy, education, and community. And so advocacy is kind of what I described, where we try to work to make the built environment better for biking and walking and make it easier to get around without a car. Community involves a lot of events that we do, such as open streets, which is where we close down stretches of road and open them up to people who are biking, walking, skateboarding, whatever, as long as you're not driving a vehicle. And then in the education part, it is as it states. We work to educate people on biking and walking in the city of Pittsburgh. So, making sure that they're safe, making sure they know how to ride with traffic, making sure they know what all the street markings are, stuff like that. And we also work with a lot of youth through the education department.
And we also had our 20th anniversary party this year, which was really great. And that was a lot of our members and supporters that we've worked with throughout our past 20 years of being an organization, but also it was inviting the community to get engaged with the fun aspect of celebrating what we've accomplished, because the last 20 years have been really busy and really productive in terms of what the work has looked like for Bike Pittsburgh. We are just about coming to the end of what we call construction season. So a lot of the infrastructure updates that we've pushed for, there have been a lot of wins this construction season, which is awesome. So we communicate a lot with the city and the Pittsburgh Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, so Pittsburgh DOMI. And they were able to accomplish a couple of really big infrastructure updates this season, namely one of the most exciting ones that so many supporters are still reaping huge benefits from. It's the South Aiken bike lane. It was a really dangerous connection in Shadyside area that we've been calling for some type of change in a bike lane there for quite some time, and then this construction season actually happened, much to the benefit of many people through that area.
I mean, in my mind, the changes have been pretty dramatic. Sometimes, when you're in the day-to-day, it's, you get frustrated, things aren't connected, cars treat you poorly. Then with the 20th anniversary, it's really allowed us to reflect on what it was like 20 years ago. And it was very different. It was a very different city. You know, it almost felt like every time you went out, you had to like prepare for battle. And now there are bike lanes that connect lots of places in the city. You can get from neighborhood to neighborhood between bike lanes, but then sometimes they're, you know, they don't connect. You know, there's still obviously hills that you have to, that are challenging that we're not going to be able to, you know, handle. But in general, the whole feel of getting around town is very different. Now, can it get better? Of course. Is it great now? It's good, but compared to 20 years ago, it is kind of like night and day.
So we're seeing these updates happen, and they're really exciting, but it's also not without the very hard work of many people, both on Bike Pittsburgh's team as well as the neighborhood groups that we work with. So
we have approximately 3,500 members, and if you do the math, that's 1 out of every 300 Pittsburghers, roughly, is a member of Bike Pittsburgh. So, which is actually a pretty big ratio for bike advocacy organizations in general across the country. And so we've had good responses, but like anything, like any change, there's always people who don't like the stuff we're doing. But in general, there has been a positive result in a lot of the new infrastructure, the new bike lanes. You know, while at first sometimes there are issues when it, you know, before it goes in, people complain they don't want to lose a parking space or they don't want to give up any space on the street. After it's in, often people are much more appreciative and actually see the benefit that the new infrastructure provides. Kind of what's happening next is that, you know, over the past 20 years, we've increased the number of bike lanes from around 10 miles to we're probably around 60 miles of bike lanes plus another 40 miles of bike ways within the city. And the problem is that they're often disconnected. So you'll be riding in one and then all of a sudden it ends and then you're, you know, in traffic needing to ride with cars. And so you lose that either protection or even just that little bit of space. And so the big thing that needs to happen now is to connect all of those little bits and pieces so that it forms an actual network. And I do think we need to expand bike lanes and bike infrastructure into neighborhoods that have historically been underserved. And that's, you know, everybody deserves safe streets, and we got to make sure that everybody in the city has access to ways that they can get around without driving.
So this is a really big part of what our education department does. It's publishing all of the safe bike routes around town. It's a really important resource to help you plan your ride, and each edition of the bike map adds in some of the new infrastructure that we work on. So you can see there's a map key to help you plan out whether you want to ride on just the trails. There's a color coordination for that, or if you want to ride on some of our recommended bike routes. You know, this bike map is a great physical resource to help get you going.
The best way to get involved and support Bike Pittsburgh is to become a member. It's the funnel to get people into the organization so that you can know what's going on. You know, you'll be updated. You'll get updates on all the events and advocacy initiatives. I would say other ways to get involved are attend our events. And then another third way would be we have a network of BikePed advocacy organizations throughout the city, and find your local neighborhood advocacy group and join them. And that's also a really great way to get involved and especially to help push for changes within your neighborhood.
Bike Pittsburgh's mission is really for all. It's not just for cyclists. We may be called Bike Pittsburgh, but really when it comes down to it, our advocacy, education, and community centers on improving the quality of life for all Pittsburghers. And that goes to say we're pushing for safer streets, not just for cyclists, but for pedestrians and for people to thrive and to have safer and more accessible ways to get around town, to make Pittsburgh a more livable city in general. And you don't need to ride a bicycle to benefit from the work we do here at Bike Pittsburgh.
We get so boiled down a lot of the details, but really bikes are fun. They're great. And it's something that everybody should have access, you know, and feel safe doing.